Hello and welcome back to Fair's Fair, where we have removed all safety regulations. Because it turns out it's actually cheaper just to pay off the person's family and threaten to fight it in court than it is to actually enforce safety regulations. But today we'll be looking at possibly one of the greatest creature features to come out in recent history. And, well, don't get your hopes up. That's not saying a huge amount, but it's still better than most things. We'll be talking about Underwater, a very interesting movie. Basic premise, they're underwater in a deep-sea boring facility. Something goes wrong, there are shifts, things start falling apart, they are trapped underwater, high pressure, must get to escape pods. It's not a complicated plot. It's a creature feature. If you were hoping for a complicated plot, you were in the wrong genre. I'd recommend a detective movie, but we have trouble making those any good nowadays too. But one of the first things I noticed about this was, it wasn't an amazingly great movie. Like, it didn't knock me on my ass as the greatest movie of all time. It was not The Thing. The Thing is possibly my holy grail of creature features. A lot of people choose Alien because, you know, it's a bit less thriller than The Thing is. But I don't know, The Thing will always be my number one because it had a much deeper premise to it. Namely, the lack of trust in people around you that you thought you could trust up until recently. In the real-life version of this, it's usually because you start getting the feeling that people are in life for themselves and don't really care about you. Whereas in The Thing, one of them had his stomach open up and bite the doctor's arms off, then his head crawled off, grew giant tentacle eyes, and ran away like a spider. So, you know, basically the same thing. But the first thing I'm going to do is address some of the more ridiculous reviews I've seen about it. Now, it's not the best movie, it's not even the best creature feature. But for the love of God, the reason people have tanked the reviews on this is absolutely stupid. As usual, I won't be naming names because I'm not painting targets here, but I'd like to highlight a few bits of reviews. Here's one that I thought was really kind of funny. Quote, "The allure of the monster film genre is that the best ones provide a multi-dimensional look at the creature in opposition." Ah yes, the multi-dimensional look of the alien from Alien, which you refer to in this very paragraph as the holy grail of films about extraterrestrial life in outer space. I remember the many dimensions that alien had, such as killing a guy to be born, then killing everyone else without laying eggs or having any real purpose in killing them. In fact, it seemed to just kill them because it really wanted them dead for some reason. It also happened to crawl through vents, a deep and philosophical commentary, no doubt. And it ran away when shot with bullets, contrary to every other thing that gets shot with bullets. I can see the deep and introspective view of its mind from these incredibly complicated interactions. The allure of a monster film is the monster. The idea that it has to be relatable or possibly misunderstood is ridiculous. It has to be a good monster that I can believe is a threat, doesn't feel too overwhelming, but is something to be afraid of. Adding extra commentary in on top of that is always a good thing, and they did have deeper meanings in the movie Underwater. In fact, many reviewers mentioned that it didn't have deeper meanings to it. I mean, am I remembering wrong? I could have sworn they literally said that we dug too deep. It comes off as a commentary on humanity having a really bad habit of fucking around in places where, much like in elementary school, you really shouldn't be fucking. But he goes on to say that they have layers and feelings and personalities what? Hold on, how did he word this? They have layers and feelings and personalities is a critical aspect to making a good creature feature. That's a good sentence. I like that sentence. Maybe he should have done less fucking around and more learning in that elementary school. Or her, actually. I believe one of these reviews was written by a woman, but I have absolutely no idea which one because I didn't bother to learn the names of anyone who wrote the reviews. And no, it's fucking not. The original Tremors didn't give a personality to the graboids. The Thing didn't give a personality to the Thing. It just did whatever it could to survive. It ate everything that it could. It was all about survival and contaminating and infesting everything. In Alien, it was about hunting down and killing everyone on the ship for seemingly no actual motivation. You say Underwater attempts none of this, good. I'm really sick of creature features and monster movies feeling the need to make their monster relatable. I don't need to be related to it. I don't need to think that it's secretly a good guy. Far too many people have been trying to break down the genre and subvert your expectations of a monster. And frankly, the pursuit of this has led to the entirety of the genre going downhill in quality, and that's not boomer talk. It has been going down in quality. This is a step back in the right direction. Now, is it a great movie? No, we're going to get into that. We'll get there. Hold on. He continues to say there is no origin story. Yes, there was. There was an underwater cave. It was in the movie. They broke through into it, and these things came out. Were you watching the movie? Do they want to burrow into a human host to evolve? No. Do they feed on humans? Yes, we found one partially eaten. Is it a reaction to a perceived threat? Potentially, you did drill into their home, but then again, most monster movies don't actually clarify on that. How do they reproduce? Doesn't matter, I wasn't really interested in giant squid creature reproductive qualities. It wasn't important. We did see a young one inside of a human body, so theoretically they lay eggs inside of old prey. Quote, it's a rushed adventure that hopes the audience doesn't want to get too technical. Oh, I'll get technical later, and it did have some technical flaws. Unfortunately, you seem to ask a lot of questions that were very easily answered if you... And bear with me now, you are a movie critic, and I don't mean to tell you how to do your job, but if you watched the movie, you would have gotten the answers to these questions. Not to be presumptuous of what you're supposed to be doing as a movie critic. Maybe he's overworked, but that reviewer did not seem to actually have watched the movie all that well. On to another reviewer, he says, but by God, it's murky. This is not the first line of it, but, you know, it's where his review actually gets interesting. Yeah, it's like they're underwater, and there's, like, a lot of murk underwater, and, you know, you kinda gotta look around and shit. And you're at a distinct disadvantage. I can't imagine why a thriller genre would want you to feel claustrophobic, alone, and at a major disadvantage compared to the monster. There's a reason they do so many first-person shots, similar to the movie Gravity, which was a decent movie. In the movie Gravity, they did a lot of first-person shots because getting in the helmet, watching just how disorienting it can be to spin in space was important. It really set the terror of space into people. In this particular instance, yes, you have lights, yes, you have suits, yes, you are protected from the water, but you're not at an advantage. It knows where you are, but you can't see shit. It's only murky during those parts, while they're out in the water. This reviewer continues to say that their second issue involves things that might be spiny and might be slippery, but are certainly too ill-lit to generate much audience unease. I mean, yeah, early in the movie, they didn't show the creatures in their entirety, because if you just show your monster in big, bright lights on the screen, it's not all that threatening. All of the old, good monster features did this. If you just bust your monster nut real early in the day, then you're not going to be up for playtime with it later. And I'm not sure what he's talking about by claiming that the movie was incredibly dark and it was hard to watch because of that. My creator's incredibly nearsighted and had to sit way, way up in the theater. Back when, you know, theaters were a thing. But in this movie, he never had issue actually watching the movie. It didn't seem all that ill-lit. I don't know what your personal viewing experience was or where you watched it, but maybe the lighting of your room and or the screen you watched it on might be affecting that, because every version I've watched seemed plenty well lit for you to understand what's on screen. Though he does make a pretty good point in this paragraph where he says that, you know, people die and, you know, they shed a tear, but nobody had any real connection to it from the audience. And he says, sorry to lose you, Chuck or Dave or Barry or whoever you were. He's got a point there. They didn't really connect us to any of the characters. Like I said, it's not the best movie ever made, but it's certainly one of the better monster movies made recently. He also continues on to inform us of his budding lyricist career, which is very important, as he states that he was composing lyrics, or alternative lyrics, for a 1971 middle-of-the-road hit, which is what he was doing earlier, in case any of you were wondering. No one was wondering. This has nothing to do with your review, and you being bored at a movie is not a good reason for it to be bad. I was bored at The Godfather. It wasn't bad. The writing was solid. The characters were solid. I just wasn't interested in the gangster topic. It was something that is defaultly uninteresting to me. A nuclear physicist going on and on about nuclear physics is going to be really fucking boring to a porn actor. Likewise, a porn actor discussing his most important ways to prevent himself from blowing early would probably be very boring to a nuclear physicist, or at least highly disturbing. No one cared what you were doing during that. That had nothing to do with your entire review, and even if you were boring, that doesn't mean that the movie was bad. But yeah, good luck on your budding lyricist career. I had a bowl of ramen earlier. It was really good. It was a decent quality ramen. I got it from Walmart though. You may be wondering what this has to do with anything in the review, and the answer is it doesn't have anything to do with the review at all. In fact, it's a massive waste of time for me to be going on about what I might have been doing while I was doing more interesting things than reading your review about a movie that you clearly already made up your mind about, and could possibly be considered a massive waste of my viewers' time. In fact, they should be viscerally, horrifically upset that I'm going on a massive tangent about something that was completely unrelated to the topic of the video. I don't know, any of you got a favorite ramen? Let me know in the comments. I'm a big fan of tonkatsu ramen, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's good stuff. Most of the other reviews seem to get a bit one note, talking about how it has taken from Alien and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and mashed them together. Wait, what? Did I read that fucking wrong? Those were both really good movies. Why is that a problem? But bad takes by bad reviewers aside, let's talk about the movie itself. Was it really, really good? No, it had really, really good parts to it. Some people didn't like the comedy relief character, who was kinda quirky, but frankly, he's exactly the kind of person I'd expect to seclude himself in a deep underwater working facility for a very long time. You have to be a special kind of crazy to do something like that, and you have to have a particular drive to do it. So yeah, if you go to a really extreme environment, you're gonna find some extremely quirky people. Get used to it. It's how the rest of the world operates when you don't live in a perpetually massive city like Hollywood or New York. The further away from hyperdense cities you are, the less people care about whether or not they're being too quirky for the rest of society. But the movie did move at a rather breakneck fast pace. I realize why they did it, and it definitely makes sense, but you don't really get super attached to any one person. I'm sure someone's going to mention the fact that the monster did at one point rip someone's suit leg off and pull them out like so much crab meat through a straw, but at the same time, one of them struggled to break into the center part chassis of one of the suits that she was wearing. Allow me to go ahead and wipe this issue away because it's a really stupid issue. First of all, it twisted and pulled on the leg of his suit, whereas it attempted to crack her suit open like a shell. The suits they are in are designed to withstand the extreme pressure of deep underwater. Therefore, on compression, it's probably really, really fucking strong. It has to be. However, on not compression, namely on being pulled apart, it's not all that strong. In fact, it's borderline useless. Try to replace a diving suit with an astronaut's spacesuit and things will probably go horrifically wrong. I'm not an engineer, so I couldn't tell you how accurate that is, but I do know that something designed to withstand the high pressure underwater would not do well in space, because the physics of resisting compression and resisting a vacuum are two completely different things. The suits were not designed to be prevented from being pulled apart, they were designed to stop things from pushing them together, namely the water. But the movie had some really, really good bits. Namely, it doesn't show the monster too much, which is a good thing. You never want to blow your load early. It gave us enough intrigue about things to keep us interested, namely the finding of the baby monster at one point inside of a corpse. And at no point did it slow down so much that it became difficult for you to really get on with the movie. Like, it knew what it was. It knew it had to move fast, and so it did. Shockingly fast at times. And it did its job very well. It had an effective monster, it had an effectively scary atmosphere, and it had an effective cast of people who, well, you know, alright, we're getting into spoilers, so plug your ears, watch the movie, whatever you want. Everyone died. Some way or another, they all had to sacrifice themselves. It did happen one too many times. Namely, I think it happened like 3 times, which in a cast of like 4 or 5 characters is a lot of times. But here's where we get to some rather hard-hitting points against it. First of all, it was really good when one guy explosively compressed because his suit was broken. And I'd just like to say that that was a beautiful scene. I could watch that man be explosively compressed by the water all day. Which sounds like I'm a really fucked up person, but I promise, not a single therapist has ever told me anything like that. Not that I could ever actually afford a therapist. Alcohol's way cheaper. Remember, kids, drink, drugs, and rock and roll, or whatever the saying is. I couldn't remember it. But as I was saying about the compression, Some parts of the facility seem to have broken down, and while, yes, I bet the facility was designed to avoid explosively compressing all over should there be a small flaw, it being a whole facility, I imagine it has a lot of fail-safes in its structure. If water's getting in anywhere, that water should be coming in with enough pressure to cut someone in half like a laser. They use high-pressure water to cut through steel in some machines. So the fact that the facility has broken roofing and water inside it means that there has to be actual holes somewhere for that water to have gotten in through. And basically, I don't believe that the facility should really still be intact if there's a hole in any part of it. It should have sealed off the part that broke, and that whole section would be just ruined. Totally intraversible. And frankly, the most egregious thing it did, not once, folks, but twice. They had a nuclear meltdown that resulted in a massive atomic explosion. This is not how nuclear reactors work. They didn't say it was a nuclear reactor, but they did say it was a reactor and that it had a meltdown. So nuclear is the assumption. And I'm really sick of this trope. Make it a fucking antimatter reactor if you want to have it explode, because that I'll actually believe will go atomic if you don't handle it properly. Stop using the reactor as your end-all fix-all blow-em-up button in every movie. This was in a whole video I made about ridiculous tropes in Hollywood. No matter what you do to a nuclear reactor, it's not going to be readily convertible into a bomb. That's not how they work. Overall, with the light character development and the breakneck pace, I didn't get super invested in the characters, so I wasn't ultra upset when any of them died, which is a bit of an issue because the humans and the monster were both rather vague. Along with the facility's seemingly by plot convenience collapsing speed and the fact that, reactors going meltdown equal explosion, I would not consider this a particularly great movie. However, I am so sick of everyone trying to make their monster so relatable. Everyone wants to be the original Frankenstein again. Oh, it's misunderstood. You just don't understand. It doesn't have to be relatable. The alien from Alien was not relatable. The Predator was not super relatable. It didn't have to be. The movie was perfectly capable of being compelling without that. Underwater is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough steps. It's a movie that had a theme, played through on its theme, had a monster, played through on its monster, and had characters and played through on its characters. I would give it a competent, which is higher than I'd give almost every film made by Disney in recent years. So end result, I'd definitely give it a 70, I'd say. A good solid C. It's not pushing any boundaries because, frankly, I'm sick of watching people ruin their movie by trying to forcefully push boundaries. It's not a hyper-complicated plot, and I'm sick of people trying to force deep themes into plots that don't support them. But it's a passing grade, and that's a good watch. If you got spare time, Underwater couldn't hurt you. But then again, I'm a huge fan of the monster movie genre, and really was getting sick of there not being any good ones, so maybe I'm just being hopeful on this one. Personal bias is acknowledged. But thanks for joining me for the review, and I hope all of you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, all those things that you can undo later if you decide you hate me, and are also well-established scientifically factual ways to increase your sex drive. It's a fact. Check it. Look it up. Probably. But if you don't agree, or I mentioned your review in here... yeah, no one that important's gonna see my video. But if you don't agree at least, feel free to go to the comments, and remember to be entertainingly angry.